Hey YouTube, Alex here, and in today's video I want to answer the question, what are some signs that you're ready to leave long term? Of course, this isn't an exhaustive list, and surely we can come up with more factors than this, but I thought I'd come up with a few that I think are signs that a person is ready to become an expat, a long-term traveler. They're ready to start working abroad, working remotely. And I don't use those necessarily interchangeably, but rather point out that they can be different iterations or implementations of the same general idea. Leaving your home country for somewhere else, for a different lifestyle, a different way of doing things. So before I get into today's video, you know the drill. Definitely give me a thumbs up. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to the channel because it definitely helps share our video with more people. And comment, let me know what you think. If you disagree or agree with the premise, I want to know what you think about it. So the first thing I'm going to say here is no debt. I believe that it's really valuable to not have any debt when you are planning to leave long term and to have a good credit score. And this serves as a layer of an emergency cushion or a emergency fund. And basically what having no debt means is one, if you need to go back to your home country, you have good credit, you can borrow money. Two, if you, for example, you have a situation where they need to check your credit score. For example, finance industry, you need a good credit score typically. There's other jobs as well where you need a good credit score, but having no debt's going to help a lot with that. And if you are abroad and you run into emergency where you need to borrow a bunch to pay for something, then you have those lines of credit available. I personally have great credit, and that's one of those signs that I knew, hey, I'm ready to travel long term, is I'm not borrowing money to do this. So the next thing I'm going to mention here, you have an itinerary for the first month. I don't think it's necessary to explain or plan out a full year or 6 months or 3 months, but at least knowing what you're going to do for the first month, knowing the city that you're going to be in or the cities that you're going to be in, knowing what you're going to be working on, knowing kind of what you're going to be eating, where you're going to be staying. These things I think are really good ideas to have in mind for the first month. And then once you want to extend beyond that, you can start planning when you get there. So for me, if I wasn't needing to go back to the US in roughly 6-7 weeks, I'd be planning after Peru to go to somewhere like Chile. So that's something to consider, but I didn't know that when I got here. I thought, well, I'll go down there and I'll think about it for the first month, and based on what's open and what I can reasonably afford, I'll pick the next few places. But of course, I need to go back to the US to handle some things. So that's what I'll need to do. But having that itinerary will really help you, knowing kind of what you're going to do, kind of like I said, just a rough outline. Not over planning, not knowing what you're going to do every second of every day for the first month, but having an idea, like 9 to 5. If you're used to working a 9 to 5 job and you're still in that kind of cycle, well, at least you can plan your productivity around that. You don't have to totally be alien to things. You can say, well, Monday through Friday, I'm going to a cafe and I'm going to work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or I'm going to work from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. or whatever structure you want to structure it like. But kind of still maintaining that structure that you used to, some of that framework that you can follow to be productive. The next thing I'm going to mention here is savings. You definitely need savings to travel long term. Some people say bring double the savings, double the money, sort of, and half the stuff. So I definitely recommend having savings and investments. There's not too much money that you can bring abroad in many cases, in my personal opinion. I think that your mileage may vary, depends on your job, depends on your economic background, family, all that stuff. But the more savings you can bring, the better. It's going to make you more comfortable, less stressed, and more able to handle problems as they arise without feeling like you're going to melt down or something. The final thing I'm going to mention here, I've got two more. So familiarity with the region you're traveling to. So I wouldn't recommend deciding to long-term travel and then packing a bag and a week later being gone for a really long time. I'd say take at least, perhaps if you're working full time right now, take a couple nights a week for even a couple of months and read about the region that you're going to. I happen to get hooked on the information, and I'm reading every night, reading all the time. I spend a lot of my free time learning about traveling abroad, researching different destinations for leisure, for business, all these different things. But whatever region you're heading to, whether it be Eastern Europe, whether it be Southeast Asia, South America, have familiarity with that region. Do your research on what the weather is going to be like. Do your research on what languages are spoken. Do your research on what kind of foods you're going to be having when you're there. And these kinds of things can really prepare you to get into that long-term travel mindset. Because I think a lot of people haven't traveled to a certain place for a month or for 2 months or 3 months, and they're not necessarily sure, how do I go from my normal day-to-day routine to this other style or way of doing things? And I think there's a lot you can take from your previous lifestyle to make your new lifestyle happy. I think a lot of people become unhappy in long-term travel when they just don't, or the start of long-term travel. Most people, if they don't like it, they'll stop and go back to their old way of doing things, but they get stuck in the start of it just because they didn't really plan out things as well. So these are some of the planning tips that I have for you. Finally, you made a pro-con list. So it's important in my mind, and a buddy of mine, Spencer, he did this when he moved from where we're from to California. He did a bunch of pro-cons lists. What are the pros of moving to California? What are the cons of moving to California? What are the pros of staying where I'm at? What are the cons of staying where I'm at? And that's really what you need to consider when you are thinking about long-term travel, is what are the pros of long-term travel? Well, for me, the pros are a big variety. I get to meet new people. I really like to meet interesting new people. It's ironic because I'm an introvert, but I find some of the people I meet abroad are totally fascinating. The culture, I really like to learn about other cultures, and even cultures I'm not familiar with. Like, I just didn't have as much exposure to Latin American or indigenous cultures, but this trip is really changing that a whole lot. I'm exposed to a lot of different ideas and things, and food. Food is another one. I really like to eat food, as I'm sure many of you do. And traveling abroad, for me, long-term travel, I'm not just going to the tourist neighborhood and eating the Red Lobster for a week. No offense to people who like Red Lobster. Last time I went to Red Lobster in the States, it was terrible. It was one of the worst seafood experiences I've ever had. But for me, I don't have to go to Red Lobster. When I visit Lima, Peru in about a month, I'll have local street food, ceviche. So I'll still have really good seafood, but I'll pay much less for it, and it'll really taste unique, and it'll be a really great experience. On the con list, well, it does get tiresome sometimes to have to change SIM cards, to have to learn a new city, to have to practice a new language. You have that lost in translation feeling. Some of these things can be a little bit frustrating, but they're really small in the grand scheme of things. I find much of my stress comes from America as opposed to many of the places I like to travel long term. Of course, this could be different if I settle down in a given place for a long time, and I'm not going to be dishonest in that regard. If a place, I end up deciding to stay in a place for a year and I tend not to like it after, say, 6 months, I'll let you all know. I'll probably move on to the next place first, but I definitely think that not all places are created equal, and not all places are going to appeal to all people, right? I don't recommend going totally against the grain and picking somewhere you really don't like just for the sake of trying it. If you hate cold weather, don't feel like you're not a real traveler if you're not in Estonia in the winter, or you're not in Serbia or Belarus. I have a couple of friends from Belarus and from Ukraine, and they're American, and they live in America now. They were born in those respective countries, and they're like, I just really don't like the cold. Like, I love my home country, I love my family, but like, I just really don't like dealing with the cold. And so even though I'm from that place, I speak the language, I love the food, I know everything about it, I just don't want to be in the cold weather. So that's something to think about. I wanted to wrap it up on a humorous note. This video has been discussing what are the things that you're ready to leave long term. The one I'd have to toss on there on top if I had to add one is maybe you know a little bit of the local language. You have some basic phrases. For example, in Spanish, you say hola for hello or ciao for goodbye. These types of things can really make your experience better and really set you off on the right start. And that's part of what this channel is about, is teaching you how to get started on the right start for traveling long term. So if this video has been helpful, give us a thumbs up. It helps share our video with more people. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this content, you want to see more content like it, and comment and let me know what you think down below. If you agree or disagree with the premise, we want to hear what you think. So until next time, I'll see you later.